The Galactic Council chamber rang with a cacophony of argument. Representatives from a dozen spacefaring species debated furiously, their voices rising with each exchange. At the center of the dispute was a desperation transmission, a distress call from a primitive world at the edge of known space. The Zorani are not a council species. We have no obligation to intervene. The insectoid krill ambassador rattled, his mandibles clacking. If we set a precedent of interfering in the affairs of pre-contact civilizations, it will only breed chaos. The avian Quexel representative trilled. We cannot in good conscience ignore a plea for help. The furred Volusian slammed her paw on the voting console. The human ambassador had remained silent, studying the star maps and data scrolling across her screen. The world in question was indeed primitive, barely at the threshold of spaceflight, but the images of burning cities and fleeing refugees made her jaw clench. The scans indicated the attackers were using advanced plasma weaponry and orbital bombardment. This was no internal conflict. It was an invasion by an spacefaring aggressor. As she enhanced the data feed, her eyes widened. The attacking ships matched no known council race, but the silhouettes and energy signatures were hauntingly familiar. She quickly accessed the classified human databases, searching through secured files of humanity's early forays to the stars. There, a skirmish over a century ago, with a raiding party near Alpha Centauri. The battle had been brief, and the aggressors, upon realizing they were outmatched, had fled. They left behind only a name whispered in intercepted comms: Krill. The human ambassador stood, drawing the eyes and tentacles of the gathered council. "This is no isolated assault," she declared, "but an act of war by an spacefaring power against a defenseless species. If we let them act with impunity, how long before they come for other worlds, council worlds?" "You overstep, human," the Krill ambassador hissed. "This is mere speculation. The attackers are clearly a local faction." "I have proof," the human interjected. Energy signatures matching those of a hostile race humanity encountered in the past. A race calling themselves the Krill. Shocked silence gripped the chamber. Then a barrage of outraged denials and accusations erupted from the Krill delegation. "Lies. The humans seek to mislead. We protest this baseless slander." The human ambassador raised her voice over the din. "I motion for an emergency intervention to defend the Zorani." Any opposed? The vote was swift and divided. Most council members, cowed by the specter of war, voted against action. The result flashed on the main display. Intervention denied. The human slammed her fist on her console, splintering the screen. "Damn you all. Innocents are dying as we dither." She turned and strode from the chamber, her stride long with cold purpose. Once outside, she summoned her aides and issued a flurry of orders. "Send word to the home fleet, transmit the distress call on all human channels, and dispatch a courier to the Explorer Corps on the frontier. We will muster every ship we can, even if we must act alone." Within hours, a ragtag human armada was assembling in Sol's outer orbit. Military ships, hastily armed prospectors, research vessels scrambling to weld on emergency deck cannons. It was a far cry from the vast and mighty fleets of the council races, but it was all humanity could gather on such short notice to answer the distant call for aid. As she stepped aboard her flagship bridge, the ambassador knew they would be outnumbered and outgunned. But she also knew, deep in her bones, that no human could abide standing by while the innocent suffered. Whatever awaited them in that distant star system, they would face it head-on and unblinking. For that was the human way, to rage against the dying of the light, no matter how vast the darkness. The ragtag human fleet tore out of warp at the edge of the besieged star system, drives straining and hulls shimmering with the residual energies of their hasty translation. On the flagship bridge, the ambassador gazed in grim awe at the vista that filled the view screens. A shattered armada of primitive craft tumbled in the void, gutted by plasma fire. Beyond them, the night side of the planet burned with the orange blossoms of orbital bombardment. And there, hanging in pitiless space above the ravaged world, was their foe. A krill dreadnought, its carapace bristling with batteries of plasma cannons and torpedo tubes. Its spined and segmented hull dwarfed the largest human ship, and its multifaceted eyes seemed to glint with cruel hunger as it swung its prow to face the newcomers. "Hail from the dreadnought," the comms officer called out. "They're demanding we withdraw immediately or face annihilation." The ambassador's reply was cold and clipped. "Put me on." She stepped forward, her voice booming across the comm. "This is Ambassador Takahashi of the Terran Alliance. You are hereby ordered to cease fire and withdraw from this system, by authority of the Galactic Council. Fail to comply, and we will respond with all due force." The krill's response crackled with malevolent clicking. "Pitiful humans, you have no authority here. This system belongs to the Krill Imperium, by right of conquest. Leave now, and perhaps we will not consume your entrails as we feast in the ruins of the Zorani." Ambassador Takahashi cut the channel with a slash of her hand. "So be it. All ships, engage at will. Protect the planet, and someone find me any friendlies left in that mess." Like ancient sea wolves of Earth, the human craft surged forward, teeth bared. Fighters and armed merchanters accelerated into the debris field, lancing fire at the krill escorts and rushing to form a defensive perimeter. The heavier military ships angled their prows at the dreadnought, magnetic accelerators thrumming as they prepared to unleash their opening salvo. The dreadnought's shields flared as the mass driver rounds hammered home. Its chitinous hull rang with the impact, but held firm. Then its weapons ports irised open, blistering the void with searing light. The human ships scattered and juked, weaving a desperate evasive dance, but the merciless barrage found its marks. A research cutter, its civilian shields never meant for war, spun away trailing flame. A frigate, armor half-slagged, took a glancing beam to the bridge and tumbled, lifeless. The brilliant beams criss-crossed the void, scything through bulkheads and boiling crews in their seats. But even as they burned and died, the humans did not break. They took a toll of their own, swarming wolfpack and savaging the krill escort craft. And the dreadnought, for all its might, could not train all its guns on so many gnats at once. On the flagship bridge, the ambassador clasped her hands behind her back, her eyes never wavering from the carnage unfolding across the view screens. "Get our transport stuffed with every power-armored marine and medic we've got, and spin up the fabricators. I want boarding pods, breaching charges, and area denial munitions. As soon as we get a hole in those screens, we get boots on the ground. The Navy will keep space clear. The real fight is going to be planet-side." As if in answer, a destroyer, its hull lacerated and leaking atmosphere, turned its wounded flank to the dreadnought and fired its last salvo. The mass rounds, propelled by the force of the destroyer's death, struck the weakened rear arc of the dreadnought's shields and burst through in a shower of sparks and shrapnel. The dreadnought lurched, reeling from the blow. In that instant of vulnerability, the sensors detected a flurry of launches from the far side of the planet. Zorani ships, battered but unbroken, rising from hidden ground bases to fling themselves at their tormentor. "There's our opening," the ambassador snarled. "All transports, execute planetfall. Drop everything we've got right on top of the biggest refugee concentrations." As the drop ships roared from the hangar bays and the beleaguered Zorani hurled themselves at the dreadnought's flanks, the ambassador allowed herself a fierce, fleeting grin. The krill wanted a war. By all the defiant stars in human space, they were going to get one. The drop ships hurtled through the tortured skies of the embattled planet, buffeted by the currents of the burning atmosphere. In the Lid Cyclone-class assault lander, Corporal Travis Halloran gripped the bulkhead of the cramped troop bay, his power-armored fingers denting the titanium. Around him, the rest of his platoon jostled and braced, their faces grim behind their tinted visors. They all knew the score. This was a hot combat drop into an unknown hostile landing zone, with no intel on enemy disposition, and no backup but the rifle in their own hands. 2 minutes. The drop master yelled over the roar of the engines. Lock and load. Travis slammed a fresh power cell into his Gauss rifle, the rifle's tactical display flickering as it synced with his helmet HUD. His eyes flicked over the squad status icons, hovering in a corner of his visor. 20 green lights, all in the yellow, but holding steady. 20 hard chargers, ready to kick ass all the way to hell and back. The ship bucked as the AA fire intensified, tossing the Marines against the crash webbing. Travis gritted his teeth and willed the pilot to hold it steady, just a little longer. 30 seconds. The assault ramp shuddered as the explosive bolts primed. Travis could hear the snap hiss of disruptor beams trying to slice through the ship's armored belly. The Krill knew they were coming and were rolling out the unwelcome mat. Well, that was just fine by him. You didn't join the Marines to be welcomed. Drop, drop, drop. The assault ramp slammed down and Travis was moving, storming down the ramp into the maelstrom of battle. His visor polarized against the glare of plasma fire and explosions blossoming across the ruined cityscape. He could see Krill warriors swarming over the rubble, their power armor glinting like wet kitten. They were dropping orbital pods right into the streets, disgorging more troops to choke the landing zone. No time to think, only to act. Travis charged, his rifle spitting hypersonic spikes at the nearest pod. The needle rounds pierced the pod's brittle carapace and detonated inside, flash-boiling the warriors within. The pod burst like a kicked anthill, spraying gobbets of shattered armor and ichor. His motion tracker showed hostiles moving to flank, but his squad was already reacting, laying down a blistering crossfire that scythed the Krill down in droves. Travis didn't even glance back as he sprinted past the twitching corpses, his blood singing as he gave himself to the flow of battle. Ahead, a towering pyramidal structure rose from the heart of the city, its onyx black stone seeming to swallow the light. The intel briefing had tagged it as the central power node for the planetary defense grid, a grid now shattered and impotent. But it was still a linchpin, and the biggest concentration of civilian life signs clustered in its shadow. First platoon, secure the pyramid. Travis barked into the comm. Evac teams, get those civvies out. Go, go, go. Krill warrior forms boiled out of the pyramid gate, plasma scythes flashing. Travis dove into a roll, feeling the heat of their beams scorch the air above him. He came up firing, his rifle on full auto, stitching a line of explosions across the chests of the warriors. His squad joined the fray, energy bayonets flashing as they closed to hand. For a furious eternity, it was a swirling melee of stabbing pincers, slashing scythes, and good old human fists and boots. Then, the comm screamed in his ear, a high wail of distress. Civilian evac on the north side. We're cut off. They're taking fire. We can't hold. Travis was already running, vaulting bodies and debris, not feeling the plasma bolts that skipped off his armor like hot rain. He rounded the flank of the pyramid and saw them. A knot of terrified Zorani cowering behind a crumbling wall, a handful of Marines crouched over them, firing desperately at the Krill horde rampaging towards their position. And in the midst of those civilians, one small form broke from the huddle and ran, stumbling over the rubble. It was a child, a Zorani cub, wailing in terror. A Krill warrior loomed from the smoke behind the child, scythe raised. Travis didn't remember triggering his jump jets. All he knew is that he was suddenly there, standing over the child, his power fist slamming into the Krill's faceplate with a crunch of shattering crystal. The scythe blade scored across his chest in a spray of sparks, but he barely felt it. His augmented muscles pistoned, slamming the Krill into the rubble. He reached down with his other hand and scooped up the child, tucking it to his chest. The tiny Zorani stared up at him, eyes wide and gleaming in the tinted shadow of his visor. "I've got you," Travis murmured, surprised at the softness in his own voice. "I've got you, little one." He turned back to the defensive line. The child nestled in the crook of his arm and strode through the smoke and fire. His platoon surged to meet him, forming a wedge, rifles elevating to lay down a blistering curtain of covering fire. They were Marines. They were human. They had a job to do. And heaven help any bug-eyed bastard that tried to stop them from doing it. In the hastily fortified command center at the heart of the Zorani capital, Ambassador Takahashi stood over a holo display, her eyes flicking over the real-time tactical data streaming in from orbit and the surface. The situation was dire. The Krill forces were pressing hard, their numbers seemingly inexhaustible. For every warrior the Marines put down, 2 more seemed to swarm out of the landing pods. A priority comm ping drew her attention. She tapped the accept key, and a static-laced image of Corporal Halloran shimmered into view, his armor scorched and dented. "Corporal, report. What's the situation groundside?" Halloran's voice was clipped, terse. "We've secured the pyramid and established a perimeter, but the Krill are hammering us hard. We're going to need reinforcements and resupply if we want to hold this position." The ambassador nodded grimly. "Understood. I'll divert whatever forces I can spare. But Corporal, there's something else. We've analyzed the data from your helmet cam and the Zorani refugees. The Krill aren't just here for conquest. They're here for the Psi crystals." Halloran's voice sharpened. "Psi crystals? What are you talking about?" The ambassador brought up a new holo, a slowly rotating image of a jagged luminescent crystal. The Zorani have a unique resource, a type of crystal lattice that resonates with psionic energy. Our scans show the planet's crust is laced with them, and the Krill are strip mining every deposit they can find. She shifted the view, overlaying a schematic of a Krill warrior. The segmented carapace was studded with glowing nodes. "We've detected the same crystal signature built into the Krill's armor and weapons. They're using the crystals to augment their soldiers' psionic potential." Halloran grunted. "Great, as if these bastards weren't tough enough already. But why do they need so much of the stuff?" The ambassador's face was grim. "Our analysts believe they're stockpiling the crystals for something big. Something that could shift the balance of power in the galaxy. And there's more." The holo shifted again, this time displaying an image of a Zorani tall and ethereal, draped in shimmering robes. "This is a Zorani Psi Sage. Apparently, the Zorani have natural psionic abilities, but only a select few can fully harness the power of the crystals. The Krill have been rounding up every Psi Sage they can find." Halloran's growl was audible even over the static. "Let me guess. They're not inviting them over for tea and crumpets." "We believe the Krill are using the Psi Sages to amplify the power of the crystals, turning them into living psionic batteries." The ambassador's voice was hard. "Corporal, this isn't just an invasion anymore. It's a genocide, and we can't let the Krill get away with it." Halloran was silent for a long moment. Then, "Understood, ma'am. We'll hold the line, whatever it takes." The ambassador nodded. "I know you will, Corporal." Takahashi out. As the comm link disconnected, the ambassador turned to her staff, her eyes hard. "Get on the comm to Sol. Tell them we need every ship, every Marine they can spare, and put the word out to our allies. The Zorani need more than just humanity fighting for them." She turned back to the holo, watching the swirling dance of battle unfolding across the planet's surface. Somewhere down there, in the thick of it, was a single human soldier, a tiny spark of defiance against the overwhelming tide. "Hold the line, Corporal," she murmured. "Just hold the line. Help is on the way." The ancient temple shuddered under the onslaught, its stone walls cracking under the relentless barrage of plasma fire. Corporal Travis Halloran crouched behind a crumbling pillar, his rifle clutched tight to his chest. Around him, the remnants of his platoon huddled in the shadows, nursing their wounds and checking their dwindling ammo. It had been 3 days since the ambassador's call. 3 days of endless fighting, of holding the line against the relentless Krill tide. They had fought for every inch of ground, turning the temple into a fortress, a bastion against the enemy. But now, their time was running out. The Krill had brought in a new weapon, a towering construct of glistening black chitin and thrumming psionic energy. A Sidrednaut, the Zorani called it, a thing out of their darkest legends. It hovered above the battlefield like a malevolent god, its very presence sapping the will to fight, turning the mind to despair. Already, Travis could feel its influence warming into his thoughts, whispering of defeat, of the futility of resistance. He gritted his teeth, focusing on the weight of his rifle, the solid reality of the stone at his back. He would not give in. He could not. Beside him, the Zorani child huddled, its luminous eyes wide with fear. In the days since the landing, the child had become a constant presence at his side, a silent shadow clinging to the safety of his armored form. Travis had tried to keep the child away from the worst of the fighting, but there was nowhere safe left to hide. The temple shook again, dust raining down from the ancient rafters. Travis risked a glance around the pillar, peering out at the battlefield. The Krill forces were massing for another assault, their warriors swarming around the base of the Sidrednaut like worshipful ants. "Sergeant," Travis called over the comm. "What's the word from command? Are the reinforcements coming?" There was a hiss of static, then the sergeant's voice, strained and weary. "Negative, Corporal. The fleet's still engaged in orbit. They can't break through the blockade." Travis closed his eyes for a moment, letting the weight of it sink in. No reinforcements, no way out, just a dwindling handful of Marines and a temple full of terrified civilians against an entire army. He looked down at the child beside him, saw the trust, the hope in those luminous eyes, and he knew, with a sudden fierce clarity, that he could not let that hope die. He keyed his comm again. "Sarge, I have an idea. It's a long shot, but it might buy us some time. I'm all ears, Corporal." Travis took a deep breath. The Sidrednaut. It's the key. If we can take it out, disrupt its influence, it might give the fleet the opening it needs. There was a pause, heavy with consideration. Then, what did you have in mind? Travis looked out at the looming form of the Sidrednaut, his mind racing. The Zorani sages. They understand this psionic stuff better than we do. If we can get one of them to the top of the temple, close to the dreadnought, maybe they can do something to counteract its power. "Travis." The surgeon's voice was heavy with warning. "You know what you're suggesting. Even if you could get a Psi-Sage up there, they'd be completely exposed. It's a suicide mission." Travis's grip tightened on his rifle. "I know, Sarge. But what choice do we have? If we don't do something, we're all dead anyway. At least this way, we have a chance. Even if it's a slim one." There was a long, static-filled silence. Then, "All right, Corporal. It's your call. But you're not going alone. I'm coming with you." Travis started to protest, but the sergeant cut him off. "Don't argue, Marine. You'll need someone to watch your back. And besides," his voice softened, just for a moment, "I'm not letting one of my men face this alone." Travis swallowed hard, a sudden tightness in his throat. "Roger that, Sarge. I'll find us a Psi-Sage. Meet me at the temple steps in 5. He cut the comm and looked down at the Zorani child still huddled at his side. Gently, he reached out and lifted the child's chin, meeting those luminous eyes. "I have to go now," he said softly. "I have to try to stop the bad things. But I'll be back. I promise." The child stared at him for a long moment, then, slowly, reached out and touched a small hand to his battle-scarred chestplate. "I will wait," the child whispered, the words barely audible over the distant thunder of battle. "I will hope." Travis nodded, his throat too tight for words. Then he stood, shouldering his rifle, and strode off into the shadows of the temple to find a sage and make his last stand. Behind him, the child watched him go, eyes shining with the light of 1,000 stars. And in the smoke-stained sky above, the Sidrednaut loomed, waiting, like a black hole poised to swallow the world. The air at the top of the temple was thick with the stench of ozone and burning stone. Corporal Travis Halloran crouched behind the jagged remains of a once mighty pillar, his rifle trained on the shimmering black bulk of the Krill Dreadnought. Beside him, Sergeant Vasquez knelt, her face grim beneath her battle-scarred helmet. Between them, the Zorani Psi Sage stood, its robes fluttering in the acrid breeze. The sage's eyes were closed, its long-fingered hands weaving intricate patterns in the air, tracing glowing lines of psionic energy. "How much longer?" Travis muttered, his finger tense on the trigger. The Dreadnought was close now, so close he could feel the thrum of its power in his bones. "Patience, Corporal," the sage murmured, its voice eerily calm amid the chaos. "The threads of fate are tangled, the web of destiny strained. It will take time to unravel them." Travis gritted his teeth, biting back a sharp retort. Time was the one thing they didn't have. Below, he could hear the sounds of battle, the crack of Gauss rifles, and the sizzle of plasma, drawing ever closer. The Krill knew they were here, and they were coming. Suddenly, the sage stiffened, its eyes flying open. "I have it," it whispered. "The pattern, the key." But its gaze met Travis's, ancient and sad. "The power required. It is more than any one being can channel and survive." Travis's grip tightened on his rifle. "What are you saying?" The sage smiled, a strange, serene expression amid the apocalypse. "I am saying, Corporal, that to break the Dreadnought's hold, to shatter its power, I must become the conduit. I must take its fire into myself." Sergeant Vasquez stirred, her voice harsh. "That's suicide." "Yes," the sage agreed simply. "But it is the only way, the only chance for my people, for your people, for all of us." Travis stared at the sage, seeing the resolve, the quiet courage in those ancient eyes, and he understood, with a sudden, painful clarity, the burden of command, the weight of the choices that must be made. "Do it," he said, the words ash in his mouth. "Do what you have to do. We'll buy you the time." The sage inclined its head, a gesture of respect, of gratitude. Then it turned, facing the looming bulk of the Dreadnought, its hands rising once more. And the world exploded in a maelstrom of light and fire. Travis felt the shockwave slam into him, felt the stone shatter beneath his feet. He was falling, tumbling through a void of searing heat and blinding radiance. Dimly, he heard Vasquez shouting, heard the roar of the surgeon's rifle, the battle cry of a Marine making her last stand. Then he was rising, borne up on a wave of shimmering energy, the sage's final gift. He saw the Dreadnought shudder, saw cracks spread across its obsidian hull like a web of lightning. He saw the Krill warriors below falter, their formation crumbling as the Dreadnought's malevolent influence flickered and died. And he saw, with a sudden, heart-stopping clarity, a path through the chaos, a chance to strike the final blow. He brought his rifle up, sighting down the barrel at the widening fractures in the Dreadnought's carapace. He breathed in, the world slowing to a crystalline crawl. In that moment, he thought of the Zorani child waiting below, of the hope shining in those luminous eyes. He thought of his fallen comrades, of the sacrifices they had made. He thought of Earth, of the billions of lives hanging in the balance, on this moment, this choice. He exhaled and pulled the trigger. The rifle kicked, the hypersonic spike leaping from the barrel in a blaze of fire. It struck the Dreadnought dead center, punching through the weakened armor like a needle through skin. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the Dreadnought convulsed, a terrible, sky-rending shriek echoing from its splintering hull. Blinding light burst from the widening cracks, searing, unbearable. Travis closed his eyes, letting the light take him. His last thought, as the world dissolved into a sea of radiance, was a simple, fervent prayer. Let it be enough. Please, let it be enough. Then the light swallowed him, and he knew no more. The temple lay in ruins, its once mighty walls reduced to rubble, its ancient halls choked with the debris of war. But amid the devastation, life stirred, fragile and defiant. Corporal Travis Halloran limped through the wreckage, his armor scorched and battered, his body aching with 1,000 wounds. But his eyes were bright, his spirit unbroken. He had seen the Dreadnought fall, seen the krill lines shatter and break. He had seen the sky rainfire as the human fleet, freed from the Dreadnought's influence, had surged from orbit, their guns blazing in triumphant retribution. The battle was won, but at what cost? He found Sergeant Vasquez amid the rubble, her broken body cradled in the arms of a weeping Zorani medic. The surgeon's face was peaceful, her eyes closed as if in sleep. But Travis knew, with a certainty that ached in his bones, that she would not wake again. He knelt beside her, his hand resting gently on her cooling brow. "Rest easy, Sarge," he murmured, his voice rough with grief. "The fight is over. We won, thanks to you." He stood, turning to face the gathered survivors, human and Zorani alike. They looked to him, their eyes filled with a desperate, fragile hope. "The krill are broken," he said, his voice carrying across the shattered temple. "Their dreadnought is destroyed, their army scattered, but they will return. They will not forgive this defeat, this humiliation." He paused, his gaze sweeping across the sea of upturned faces. "They will come back, with more ships, more warriors. They will come to scour this world clean, to erase the stain upon their honor." A murmur ran through the crowd, fear and despair warring with defiance. "But we will be ready for them," Travis continued, his voice hardening with resolve. "We will rebuild, we will prepare, we will stand together, human and Zorani, united against the darkness. We will show them that this world, these people, are not theirs to take. Never again will we be caught unprepared. Never again will we be forced to cower and hide. We will fortify this temple, this city. We will train every able-bodied Zorani to fight, to defend their home. And when the krill return, we will meet them head-on, with all the strength and courage of two peoples, standing as one." He raised his fist, his shattered armor gleaming in the smoke-stained light. "This is our world, our home, and we will fight for it, to our last breath, and our last drop of blood. We will show the krill, and any who would threaten us, the true power of unity, of determination, the true strength of those who stand together in the face of annihilation." A roar went up from the crowd, a sound of hope and defiance, echoing from the broken stone. Zorani and human alike raised their voices, their spirits kindling with the fire of his words. And in that moment, Travis felt a hand slip into his, small and warm. He looked down, meeting the luminous eyes of the Zorani child, the child who had trusted him, who had believed in him. Together, the child whispered, the word of promise, an oath. Travis nodded, his throat tight with emotion. Together, he agreed, his voice ringing with the weight of destiny. And together, they turned to face the future, to face the long and difficult road ahead. The road to rebuilding, to preparing, to standing against the storm that was sure to come. But they would face it as one, unbroken and unafraid. For in unity, in the bonds of friendship and common cause, there was a strength that no force in the universe could shatter, a strength that would light the way through the darkness to a brighter dawn. Ambassador Takahashi stood at the podium, her gaze sweeping over the assembled dignitaries, the sea of faces both human and alien. Behind her, a massive viewport showed the curve of the planet below, the scars of war still visible upon its surface. But the scars were healing, slowly but surely. In the months since the Battle of the Temple, as it had come to be known, the Zorani homeworld had begun to rebuild. With the help of human engineers and resources, the ruined cities were rising again, stronger and more resilient than before. And the Zorani themselves had begun to change. No longer the timid, isolationist species they had once been, they had embraced their human allies, welcoming them into their cities, their homes, their hearts. Zorani children played in the streets alongside human children, their laughter a balm to the wounds of war. But not all wounds could be so easily healed. The absence of the fallen weighed heavy on the ambassador's heart, a constant reminder of the price that had been paid for this new era of unity. And yet, as she looked out at the faces before her, at the hope and determination shining in their eyes, she knew that price had not been paid in vain. "My friends," she began, her voice ringing clear and strong, "we stand here today not as conquerors or saviors, but as partners, as equals, as a testament to the unbreakable bonds forged in the fires of adversity." She paused, letting her words sink in. "When we came to this world, we came not to conquer, but to protect, to stand with the Zorani people against the darkness that threatened to engulf them. And in doing so, we found not just allies, but friends, family." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd, human and Zorani voices blending as one. "But our work is not yet done," the ambassador continued, her tone hardening. "The Krill, though defeated here, still lurk in the shadows. Their hunger for conquest, for domination, is not so easily sated, and they are not the only threat that lurks in the vastness of space." She leaned forward, her eyes blazing with intensity. "That is why, today, we take the next step in our journey together. Today, we extend the hand of friendship and alliance, not just to the Zorani, but to all who would stand with us against the darkness." With a sweeping gesture, she indicated the viewport, the stars glittering beyond. "Today, we invite the Zorani to join us, not as a protectorate or a vassal, but as an equal partner in the community of species, to take their rightful place among the starfaring nations of the galaxy under the banner of the Terran Alliance." The chamber erupted in applause, in cheers and shouts of joy. The Zorani delegation surged to their feet, their faces alight with pride and gratitude. And then, from their midst, a small figure emerged. The Zorani child, the one who had bonded with Corporal Halloran during those fateful days of battle. The child who had become a symbol of hope, of the unbreakable spirit that had carried them through the darkness. The child approached the podium, a wreath of glowing flowers clutched in its small hands. With solemn ceremony, it placed the wreath upon the podium, a tribute to the fallen, to the sacrifices that had made this moment possible. "In remembrance," the child said, its voice high and clear. "In honor." Ambassador Takahashi bowed her head, her eyes glistening with unused tears. "In remembrance," she echoed. "In honor. And in hope for a future forged in the bonds of friendship, of unity. A future where no child, no world, need ever fear the darkness again." As she spoke, the viewport shimmered, the stars seeming to dance and swirl. And there in the distance, a new light bloomed, a gleaming space station, bearing the emblem of the Terran Alliance. A beacon of hope, a symbol of the new era that was dawning. "My friends," the ambassador said, her voice ringing with triumph, "welcome to the dawn of a new age. An age of exploration, of discovery. An age of unity where the light of friendship and cooperation will shine brighter than any star. Welcome to the future." And as the applause thundered around her, as the stars shone bright with the promise of a new beginning, Ambassador Takahashi allowed herself a small private smile. For she knew, with a certainty that warmed her to her very core, that no matter what trials lay ahead, no matter what darkness loomed, they would face it as they had faced every challenge before. Together, always together, in unity, now and forever. The end.